Facts.
Well, what did you think of yesterday's meeting between Donald Trump and Prime Minister Mark Carney? That is one of the questions I'm going to ask you to weigh in on when we open the phone lines between noon and 1 today. It is Wednesday. That means House calls with Dr. John Gillis goes 11 until 12. So we look forward to taking your health-related calls and questions. And then, as mentioned, we'll open the phone lines and find out what is on your mind in general. But this is something that I'm sure that some of you will want to talk about. I personally thought that Mark Carney handled the situation as well as he could have. But, again, it's open to opinions. What might, if anything, he have done differently? Of course, the right of the political spectrum and those who oppose Mark Carney feel as though he bent the knee and caved and didn't stand up for Canada. I think it's a very difficult situation, and I don't know that he could have done anything any differently, quite honestly. That's just my take. And again, I'll reserve some comments and more comments on this for noon when we open the phone lines. But as mentioned, I'm not sure what else he could have done. But that's something that I will ask you to weigh in on. Also, Andrew Scheer is the interim leader, I guess we're calling it. The House, he'll be the party leader, the party leader in the House of Commons, because of course Pierre Poilievre does not have a seat. So Andrew Scheer will be the attack dog, I suppose, if you will. The temporary role is needed because Conservative leader, as mentioned, Pierre Poilievre does not have a seat in the House of Commons. Have the Conservatives learned anything from their loss? That's one of the questions that I'll ask you to weigh in on as well. And what changes, if any, are needed to grow the tent? You may think that the Conservative Party is just fine, thank you very much. It doesn't need to do anything any different. But that is, look, Andrew Scheer's more of the same, I guess. I would have preferred to see Rona Ambrose or somebody different, something different other than Andrew Scheer. But look, I guess it's comfortable for the Conservative Party with Andrew Scheer. They know what they're getting, I suppose. So that's something else that I'll ask you. And if Pierre Poilievre would have been the Prime Minister, how might he have handled that meeting with Donald Trump? What might he have done differently than Donald Trump? Just something, again, you can weigh in on. And a number of other things in the pile as well I have here that we can talk about. Had a pretty spirited call-in segment yesterday about price gouging and a lot of people upset about the fact that Halifax Water is asking for a significant rate increase over the next couple of years, in excess of 16%, and then followed by another large jump the year after because they have a big operating deficit coming ahead, and they have to fill it. So we had lots of good calls concerning that, and whatever else you got in your mind. Again, we'll open the phone lines, as mentioned, between noon and 1. I'd like to thank Veinotte as well on the other side of the glass of the control board. She's doing a fine job as always. And, of course, we will continue to track and bring you the very latest on these missing children. It's been 6 days since the search began for 2 young children went missing from their home in rural northeastern Nova Scotia. We talked about this yesterday. We had the RCMP on the show. The RCMP, I believe, are holding a news conference later on today at about 2:15. And they're saying nothing until then. So there's really nothing else we can add to that, folks. But if anything changes, we will certainly bring you the very latest. And, of course, our hearts and thoughts go out to everybody impacted by this, most in particular the families, but the people in the community as well, and all the people searching. It's just a devastating situation. So, again, if anything changes, we will certainly bring you the very latest on all of this. And, again, the RCMP are holding a news conference this afternoon around 2:15. And, of course, we'll bring you the latest from that. All right, joining us now is Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP here, official opposition in Nova Scotia. Claudia Chender, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Good morning. Nice to be with you.
Okay, so I guess First of all, let's talk about a story that I read just this morning, and I'll read a bit of it. The Associate Deputy Minister of Service Nova Scotia has acknowledged some landlords in the province are abusing fixed-term leases. However, Gary O'Toole says the department needs to understand what the long-term consequences will be before any changes will be made to the tenancy law. What are your thoughts on this?
Well, I don't know what they need to study to find out the long-term consequences. The reality is that this loophole of fixed-term leases has resulted in a 28% increase in rents year over year when we have a 5% increase. And really what it's doing at this point is driving people out of the province. I mean, people can't find a stable place to live. A third of the people who live in Nova Scotia are renting. And so, I think yesterday we had Dow Legal Aid, we had lawyers who are dealing with this day in, day out, MLAs are too, saying this system doesn't work. You're not keeping people here who we need. And they're the people who can't afford the fancy condos going up, but who are working in our, in our shipyard, in our restaurants, across our city, and they can't afford to live here. So it's a real problem, and we constantly get this language about balance. Mm-hmm. But the deputy couldn't give an example of what that means, Todd. What's the unintended consequence of making sure that in the situation we have now, where it's been recognized that prices are out of control, we need a rent cap. What's the unintended consequence of actually enforcing that and making sure people can afford a place to live? They didn't have any answers. I think it's because there are people advising the premier who benefit from being able to increase their rents. So it's a difficult situation, and it's one this government has very stubbornly refused to move on.
Okay, I guess in speaking with property owners, and I'll chat with Kevin Russell tomorrow, the Property Owners Association spokesperson. But going off memory now, but what they say is that this does not allow them any flexibility when it comes to tenants, and they need some flexibility when it comes to operating their businesses and their properties. I'm not sure exactly if that encapsulates what they mean, but anything to that?
Yeah, listen, costs have gone up for everyone. And, Kevin Russell is a great spokesperson for folks whose livelihood is tied up with renting property. But the reality is we have a rent cap. And the whole idea of fixed-term leases is it's for seasonal workers, it's for short-term stays, maybe it's for students. And that's just not how it's being used. Like, the evidence is clear. So either we have a system where we have a better rent control system, as they do in many other provinces, so that we don't need the fixed-term lease thing anymore. Real rent control would mean that, Kevin's members could apply to the tenancy board if they have to raise the rents beyond the guidelines. They could apply, if they need, as he often argues, and, truthfully, I'm sure, if you need a new heating system or you need a new roof, you go to residential tenancies and you say, this guideline doesn't work. I can't make the numbers work. We need to do these capital investments. We need to charge more. That's fine. Of course, people need to, you need to come out and a positive in market housing at the end of the day. But people need a place to live. So we need to figure out a system where that works. We need more non-market housing, which you and I have talked about in the past. But literally, people just need to know they can live in a place 1 year to the next. I mean, families, this isn't just like students going to one of the universities who are renters. Many people who are homeowners forget how many people in Nova Scotia rent. And now, as opposed to 5 years ago, most of those renters have no path to home ownership. So it's not a temporary situation. They are going to be renting for a long time if they don't have family money or some other opportunities, which, by the way, we have been proposing, things like a shared equity model. But without that, people are renting and they are totally unprotected. And this government refuses to lift a finger to make sure that they can afford their rent or that they can stay in their homes. And so we don't think that's a very balanced system.
All right. How about enough human resources at residential tenancies or the tenancy board or whatever in order to adjudicate some of these situations? I think that everybody would agree that that could be advantageous for everybody involved to have a robust system in place. What are your thoughts?
Well, this government went so far as to commission a study on implementing a residential tenancy enforcement unit. And in that study, which, went from the premise that they were going to actually do it, they estimated $1 million a year. And looking at the way that this government spends money, this government has foregone 10x that with, the bridge tolls and hospital parking, everything else. $1 million a year, we could staff up appropriately. We could be adjudicating issues. We could be bringing that balance. So absolutely, I think there's a number of steps this government could take to help renters in this province, and they've taken none of them. The only concrete change that we have seen is to shorten the period for evictions. So we really, really have a lack of balance. And, as we heard yesterday quite passionately from the folks on the front lines who are working with people who have no investment in this issue other than to express their, the needs of their clients, they don't have a political axe to grind. It's patently unfair and it's deeply challenging. And I'm hearing from small business owners that they are now very clearly losing staff because of housing costs. So I talked to the owner of a cafe in North End Halifax last week, and she said, I lost 4 staff. She said 3 of them moved away because they realized they could, for the cost of living in Nova Scotia, they could live in any city they want. And, for some young people, maybe they want to take that opportunity to live in Toronto or Vancouver or Montreal. Our cost of living has always been our advantage, and it's not anymore. And I think the government really needs to wake up and pay attention to that, because not only are they not changing these rules, they're not even taking money on the table for housing from the federal government. So I'm not sure who the advisors are, but I don't think they're giving this government very good advice.
All right, let's talk about the federal government and the Bill of Rights, which you mentioned. Tell us more about that, and what do we need to do to get that money?
Well, I think what we need to do is probably sign on the dotted line, Todd, but there's an infrastructure fund to enable housing. Every province in the Atlantic provinces has signed on to get that money in the last few months, except for Nova Scotia. The majority of provinces in Canada have signed on. Originally, that was contingent on supporting a renter's Bill of Rights. This government has refused to endorse that, which I think lays very clearly out some of the arguments I was just making. They're making for themselves. They're saying we don't want to go so far as to saying that we endorse renters' ability to live in an affordable home, to have basic protections. So I think that's something people should sit up and take notice of. But yesterday committee, we heard, it might not even be contingent on that anymore. And what we're seeing here is a continuation of what we've seen through the entire Houston government, which is a government that doesn't cooperate very well with seemingly anyone at the federal level. They left childcare on the table, money on the table for over a year. We still haven't signed on to the pharmacare agreement that would give Nova Scotians free access to birth control, that would help fund diabetes medications. We are leaving money on the table with Ottawa all the time. This is the latest example, and this is money that could be used to make Nova Scotians' lives better. We are very likely facing an economic downturn, this is all funding that helps us with our priority areas: housing, healthcare. We can't seem to sign a deal.
Right. You mentioned that potentially a lobby groups like Kevin Russell's group might have a little too much influence here with the Houston government. What, I guess, expand on that, if you will.
Well, listen, all I can do is, Kevin Russell is a dogged advocate for, investment property owners in the province. And, that's great. He's going to make those arguments. So I have no idea the influence he has. But all I know is that, it's becoming stranger and stranger, these committees and question periods and legislative sessions where we continually ask these basic questions about why we can't protect renters in any way. And we've been asking these questions for years, and the government just has no answer. And so I have to think that they, have decided that whoever is talking to them about the needs of property investors to have a healthy profit, those voices are louder than the people advising them that people need a safe, affordable place to live year over year, or that's going to have also an impact on our economy. We already have a human resources problem. And so, I can't speak to it further than that, Todd, but it's becoming more and more difficult to understand why they're making the decisions they're making because they don't have any excuse for it.
Yeah, the bottom line is like you touched on it, and people are impacted and in a pretty significant way to the point where they're leaving the province. Mm-hmm. I mean, the evidence is there that we have a massive problem. Any way you crack it up, and the government needs to do something other than just do nothing, and it looks like that's what they've chosen to do here.
Absolutely, and they'll say they're building, and they're building, but the people who are leaving are the people who can't afford those units. Yeah. I mean, and that's not speculation. The proof is in the leaving, right? And so our population is flat. We're not going to have the tax windfall we've had over the last several years of the Houston government, and they're going to have to figure out how to keep people here. They're going to have to figure out the labor force issues we have, and all of that comes back to cost of living, and at the center of that cost of living are housing costs. And this is something unlike, for, mortgages are more complex, more federal, but renting, there is so much that the Houston government could be doing to protect renters, to keep people here, to help people to be able to afford to live here. And we're not seeing them do any of it.
Yeah, and ironically, the people building often can't afford what they're built to live where the properties that they're constructing. That's irony at its best.
100%.
Yeah, for sure.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Okay, Claudia, listen, appreciate your time as always. Thanks so much. We'll do it again.
Thanks so much.
All right, take care. Claudia Chender, leader of the NDP, the official opposition. It's Emergency Preparedness Week. We'll discuss this when we come back. It's Emergency Preparedness Week, and joining us to talk about all this is Roy Hollett, our HRM Acting Director of Emergency Management. Roy, thanks for joining the show.
Oh, no problem. Thank you for inviting me.
Indeed. Okay, so tell us what's involved in Emergency Preparedness Week.
So Emergency Preparedness Week is the time dedicated to promote being prepared, and it's for residents to know the risk where you live and be prepared for anything. The worst time to try to put something together is when you need to leave in an emergency. So a little bit of pre-planning, get ready, know what could happen in your neighborhood, and if you need to leave, that you know your route to get out, anything you need to take with you. Or on the other side, if it's like a power outage or a water disruption, that you have an emergency kit at home that you could be self-sustaining for about 72 hours. So you have the ability to cook if you have the ability, if you're not in an apartment building, that you have drinking water, you have food in case something happens, and that you can lose power, lose water for up to 72 hours. That's usually the timeline that for a resident to be able to take care of themselves.
Okay, I don't suppose there's any statistics that you'd be able to reference, but how many people on average do this?
That's a good question, Todd. I don't recall many research on this. I can look into it and get back to you. But anecdotally, when I do talk to a lot of people, most people are taken. I think because of where we are and the HRM. And the events that happened in the last few years, I do see more and more people being prepared and just aware of what happened to the 10,000 wildfire, that 16,000 plus people were evacuated. So I think just more people are aware it could happen to you, and it's good to be prepared. So I'm hearing more people are taking those steps just to be prepared, especially how to get out of their neighborhood, what they need to do, and what items they need to take in a hurry if they need to leave.
Yeah, unfortunately, experience is the best teacher, right? And the best motivator.
It is. When you've got that experience here, and it was just unfortunate is not a strong enough word, but in a few months we went from the wildfires then to pretty severe flooding. It really tested people being able to take care of yourself, self-evacuate, and understand what's happening and what the risks are in your community.
Okay, so tell us more about the 72-hour kit. What should be included in that? So
the emergency kit that you have in your home, and again, every kit's going to be different. But if from drinking water to a radio, flashlights, batteries, the battery packs you see that are designed to charge your cell phone or computer, that is now almost an integral part of a kit. When we do open up, for example, a shelter or other locations, it's usually related that someone wants to charge their cell phone or other devices. So that battery pack is vital in an emergency kit. Also, food supplies that you probably don't need to heat up, and even if you have canned goods that you can open up and eat, but also a good idea to have a manual can opener. So it's just stuff like items like that you don't need electricity. You're pretty much, if you're camping, what would you have?
Yeah, for sure. And I would think also when you have a 72-hour kit, it's good to update it or to replenish it, or to
yes.
How often should people do that? Every year, or what's a good idea?
Everyone will have their own standards. Some people will use 6 months, some people have a year. Sometimes the items you put into it do expire, so it's good to recheck your kit every 6 months. Make sure the batteries are still working, flashlights working, food is unexpired. Even water will have a best before date because some bottles could taste a little bit different. The water could taste different. So just check the expiry date to make sure everything works and your kit is up to date. And sometimes things can change in your household. So you have a baby. So now you got to add to your kit because you got to make sure that the baby's taken care of. So it's good to revisit your kit every 3 to 6 months, that it's up to date, it's working. Any changes in your household are reflective in the kit.
And I suppose having a good knowledge of evacuation routes, that's something that people should be aware of as well, I suppose. What are your thoughts?
Yes, you see it in other locations, and something that we're working on here on looking at is knowing how to get out of your neighborhood. And now, yes, in some areas there's a number of streets, but they're going to converge into one street to get out of the neighborhood. But knowing where those streets are, how to navigate them, and if you're in the city where you have multiple ways out, it's good to practice different ways to drive out of your neighborhood so you know how to get out. And people are conditioned to have it. So what you don't want to do is take the same road as everyone else, and then you're stuck in traffic. So if you practice leaving your neighborhood in a different way, and when something happens in an emergency, you're going to know, okay, I can take this route because that one's likely to be congested with people.
Roy, go ahead, finish up.
Oh, sorry. And in some other cases too and we've seen it usually when we do an evacuation, is have a meeting place. So if mom and dad are at work, kids are at school, but your house is evacuated because of a wildfire, for example, then the family should have if this happens, we're all going to meet at the mall or at this location so that everyone knows in the family, if our house is evacuated, we're all going to go here. So people are not trying to find each other. And that can be very stressful in the initial stages of emergency, trying to account for all of your family members.
Okay, where's a good place, a good source to get all this information online? On the HRM website, I assume?
You got it, sir. Halifax.ca and Emergency Preparedness Week. There's information there on our voluntary vulnerable person registry, on Halifax Alert, how to sign up for that. So anything that you're looking for information is on that website. And if you have any questions, you could also email emergency management.
Okay, Roy, appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you, sir. You have a good day.
All right, you as well. Take care. Roy Hollett, HRM Acting Director of Emergency Management. Talking politics with Lori Turnbull when we come back. Lori Turnbull joins us, Dalhousie University political science professor. Lori, thanks for joining the show. As always, we appreciate your input.
Thanks for having me, Todd.
All right, so Mark Carney yesterday and Donald Trump. I guess my takeaway is I'm not sure what else Mark Carney could have done or should have done. Of course, I'm no expert. I'll defer to you on your opinion, but what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I agree with you. Like, what was he supposed to do, really?
Yeah.
And I think nobody was really expecting that he was going to go in and solve everything. But I think in terms of being able to strike the right tone and get a productive conversation going, or something that could lead to a productive conversation, I think he did that. And, certainly we're no worse off. People were worried about, oh God, what if there's going to be kind of this ambush in the White House and everything's going to be worse, but that didn't happen. So I think he did fine, actually.
But it could have easily happened if not for striking the right tone and the right balance. I think it could easily got off the rails.
Oh God, yeah. There was a universe where that was a mess. But I think Carney, he's a different guy. Like he's got a skill set, I think, that allows him to go into situations like this and keep some control over it, which is the really hard thing, right? Trump is so unpredictable. He does not use the kind of guardrails for his behavior that most people do. Like, you can make an assumption that a world leader is going to act a certain way, and that will apply to most people, even if you don't agree with their values. But Trump's kind of all over the place. But yesterday, it just seemed like right from when Carney got out of the car and they shook hands, Trump showed respect for Carney. He listened to him when he talked. He still says crap about the 51st state, but it's completely different than the way he interacted with Trudeau, for example.
Why do you think that is?
Because everything with Trump is about either like personal stuff or business. Mm-hmm. So on a personal level, if Trump likes the person or not, it has a huge impact in how the meeting is going to go. And I mean, at some level, like, we're all like that. We like people that we don't. Yeah. It affects how we interact with them. But typically when people are in professional situations, you kind of brown bag that kind of stuff and you deal with the situation at hand. For Trump, if he likes the person or not, whatever kind of like personal reaction he has is extremely impactful in the rest of the conversation. He's still talking about Trudeau and Freeland and how much he doesn't like them. Like, they're gone. But anyway, so there's that aspect of it. And I also think he respects Carney. Like, Carney is a businessman. He's an economist. He's a banker. He comes to the conversation as somebody who I think Trump actually genuinely wants to be around. Carney's the kind of person who Trump wants to spend time with. And so it's a different thing.
Okay, what tangibly came out of yesterday, if anything, or was it kind of a first date and really first just kind of laying the groundwork for some substantive issues to be dealt with in the future? What are your thoughts?
I think it was more that. It was setting the tone. It was opening up a dialogue. And I think that as an achievement is significant, because without it, we'd be kind of screwed for the rest of it, right? Yeah. Like, how are we going to get any movement on the tariffs, on whatever the negotiations around the free trade agreement are going to be, a security pact of some kind? Like, how are we going to do any of that if Trump treats Carney like he treated Trudeau? Mm-hmm. But since that's not the case, and I think both seem to leave with the same impression of the meeting and the same sense of, okay, like, we are two world leaders and we're going to work together, and they're going to see each other again at the G7, obviously. That's just right around the corner. Yeah. And so I think, we didn't see any deals signed yesterday, but we knew that. We knew it wasn't going to be that kind of meeting.
Yeah, it really is not amazing, but it really struck me quite strongly yesterday how vastly different Mark Carney is from Justin Trudeau. I mean, they're different in just about every possible way, really.
Oh, yeah. And a few people made this point yesterday, and I completely agree. The political style of Justin Trudeau is more close to that of Pierre Poilievre than it is of Mark Carney. Like, Trudeau and Poilievre, there's lots of similarities, like, getting up and, like, in this rally situation, everybody's cheering for you. You like, there's this kind of, like, extroverted, I don't know what the right word is, but just, they respond to a crowd kind of thing. Whereas Carney is more, like, people call him a technocrat. Like, he's very serious. He seems to be the same all the time. He doesn't come to life when people are cheering for him. Like, he just kind of keeps it cool all the time. Mm-hmm. And it's a totally different guy.
Yeah, why do you think that the accusations of corruption and tax evasion and all that they've thrown at Carney, one from the right, why do you think that generally has not landed?
I mean, I think in some ways it's just not the time for that. Like, I think the seriousness of the threats from the United States and the economic implications, the threats to the auto sector, all that kind of stuff, like that's taken over. And if Carney looks like the right guy to meet those challenges, then people are going to attach to that. And messages about, maybe he's got some tax issue and he's hiding something and he's got a conflict of interest and he's in with these corporate people. Like, people hear those kinds of accusations in politics all the time. Mm-hmm. And I think unless the Conservatives are going to come forward with a clear conflict of interest, proof of it, show some damage to the public interest, unless they've got a smoking gun, I just think it wasn't going to register with people. And frankly, even if they did, right, like, I'm not sure if that would have been the end of it for Carney. Like, he's just so unusually suited to meet this moment that I think people just focused on that. Or they didn't, or they voted Conservative. Lots of people did.
Yeah. All right, speaking of the Conservatives, it's kind of back to the future with Andrew Scheer as the interim opposition leader. What are your thoughts on this move?
Yeah, pretty much. Nothing, and no, everyone said this yesterday, right? Like, nothing like showing your lessons are learned by going back to the guy 2 leaders ago. Yeah. But whatever. Poilievre is going to run in this seat in Alberta, and he's going to win it as long as, the world doesn't totally go sideways. And he'll be back in the House in a couple of months. So on some level, whoever's in this role right now just kind of has to keep it together. And there's going to be, for the most part, the House isn't going to be meeting during this time. Like, there is going to be a huge meeting in May where they go back on the 26th, they choose a speaker, then the 27th is going to be the speech from the throne, and the king is giving it. So that's going to be kind of cool for Scheer to be there and I don't know if he'll be in the room or not, but kind of to be in the position then. But ultimately then, not too much longer, they'll break for the summer. So for the most part, this isn't going to have a huge impact on the fortunes of the Conservative Party. And Scheer is clearly Poilievre's guy, right? And so there's going to be no space between them. It lets Poilievre still be in control of things while he's outside the House.
I suppose he's Poilievre's guy because he's probably no threat.
He's no threat. He's already been the leader, lost an election, boom. He's not coming back. So Poilievre doesn't have to worry about him.
Yeah, there's some who were calling for Rona Ambrose would have been a good choice, and I would have thought so as well. But perhaps Poilievre wouldn't be comfortable with somebody like that. What are your thoughts?
Well, whoever's going to be the real point of this is to have someone in the House of Commons who can be the leader of the official opposition. So it has to be an MP. There would be no point in having some interim leader who is outside the House. Right. It has to be someone who can actually take the role of official opposition leader. So, for me, the only other possibility, if they were going to do, I understand the Scheer point, right? As we said, there's no threat to Poilievre. He has been leader before. He's been Speaker of the House before. So as far as somebody in caucus who knows parliamentary procedure, well, that's obviously Scheer. He's had experience. But, the other thing they could have done is genuinely shown that the party is growing. They could have put Melissa Lantsman, right? Someone is younger. She's a woman. Scheer's pretty young actually, but someone who just would have represented a fresh face. Mm-hmm. And clearly that was not the play this time. But again, Poilievre will be able to. He'll be in Scheer's ear the whole time, and this will just be a small step to Poilievre coming back in.
All right, the NDP. How much relevance does the NDP have going through the same thing, finding a new leader? What are your thoughts on the NDP?
Certainly they are in a very vulnerable state right now. They're going to have to find the person. They've chosen Todd Davies as their interim leader, which I think is a good choice. He's a very experienced MP too. He's from BC. He'll be able to, coordinate what's going on in the House, I think, very effectively. But the broader picture is, what are they going to do for a leader down the road? How are they going to build a project that people are going to want to come to? What are they going to do in terms of staking out some position? What are their key issues going to be? Right? I think they really lost a lot in terms of a distinct identity when they decided to jump in with the Liberals. And so now they have to build all that again.
How much of a challenge is it for provincial NDP like Claudia Chender here and BC and other provincial NDP parties to untangle themselves from the federal NDP?
Well, at the risk of sounding like a major jerk, I think that Jagmeet Singh was actually a ballot drag for NDP leaders at the provincial level who are trying to be competitive.
Right.
And so I don't think this is a bad moment for them. And I really mean no disrespect to Mr. Singh at all. It's the way things started to go. I mean, even like with the Liberals, like right now, Carney stock's pretty high in Ottawa and everywhere else. And he's obviously formed a strong minority, and there's a lot of a sense of mandate for him. But a lot of provincial Liberals, including in our own province, are not exactly nailing it right now. So I'm not sure there's that much overlap between them. And federally with the Conservatives, they don't get along with the provincial counterparts. So I mean, there's a bit of a break there, it seems to me. But one thing that could be really interesting is in terms of the federal NDP going out to find the right leader, where are they going to find that person? And I think there's probably people who are hoping someone like Wab Kinew, who's obviously a provincial NDP premier, is interested in the job, but I have no idea.
Yeah, and of course you get your challenges of regionalization and all that goes with it. That's one of the big challenges with this country, of course, is getting somebody who will resonate from coast to coast to coast. That's always a huge challenge, right?
Oh my God, yeah, absolutely. And I think we can see how hard that is now. And we're seeing that play out in the Conservative movement, I think, in particular, that there is a brand of conservatism in one province that might not fly in another province at all, like non-starter. And so then how do you build a coalition? And I mean, when you look at the results of the election, in terms of just looking at a map, a color-coded map, there are red and blue provinces, right? Like it really, I mean, Ontario's mixed, but a lot of, otherwise it really looks like it breaks down on kind of party lines that overlap with provincial lines.
Right. Laurie, always great. Appreciate your time. Thanks, and we'll do it again.
Sounds good, Todd.
All right, take care. Laurie Turnbull, Dalhousie University political science professor. Canadian musicians change tour plans in response to changing relations with the United States. We'll discuss this when we come back. All right, I saw this story on the CGU website this week. The headline, Canadian musicians change tour plans in response to changing relations with the United States. Joining us to discuss this is Eric Alper, publicist and music commentator. Eric, thanks for joining the show. We appreciate your time.
Happy to do it. Thanks for having me.
Indeed. All right. So, yeah, for sure. How far-reaching is this impacting Canadian musicians, this whole tariff situation?
Yeah, it's massive. Not only are the tariffs having a little bit of an economic and a cultural shift with not only the Canadian music industry, but in small businesses across the country as well, as I'm sure that you've heard from your listeners, that less U.S. touring means fewer revenue streams, less global exposure, and, of course, a growing divide between Canadian artists and the world's largest music market. Canada is about 4% of the world market. And when you think back to even before Canadian content rules started in the late 1960s, early 1970s, artists would be going down to the U.S. once they kind of decided that they've done all that they could do here in Canada. We are a very, very large country with not a lot of people. In fact, the entire state, the entire country fits in the state of California or even New York, New Jersey, and Boston. So when you kind of take out America out of the equation for artists to grow, people like Justin Bieber and The Weeknd and Drake and Laura Spencer Smith, those artists couldn't be world dominated as much as they are without breaking America. So this is pretty massive. And I think not only do the Canadian government have to figure out this problem, but I think artists and fans have to figure out what and how they're going to be supporting each other in the next number of years, because this is not going to get better.
Okay, so you say fans. Expand on that, because as you mentioned, the economy of scale is what it is here in Canada.
Yeah, what's interesting about it is that it's not just on the tariff side of it, but the U.S. visa for touring musicians increased 250%. It jumped from $460 to $1,600 per member. So a 5-piece band, that means that they have to pay $8,000 in fees. Where the fans come in is that you will start to see a lot of Canadian artists not only play the regular usual places that we're used to seeing them play, like Halifax or St. John's or Toronto, Vancouver, Montreal, but I have a number of artists right now that are going to be performing in the next couple of weeks in places that have 1,000 people, 1,200 people in their small town. So they're looking for other places to play. It's not just going to be the bars that we're used to seeing or the music festivals. It's going to be in churches, in community centers, in retail stores. And this is where the fan comes in, because, we're going to have to figure out on how much we want to support them in that. Instead of playing, 65, 60, 70 shows in America, we might be looking at 40, 50-date shows happening in Canada in places where smaller towns might be so gleefully happy that their favorite artist is coming to their town, but that we need to come on out and support them, because if not, the music industry here in Canada is going to go through a huge shift, and it's going to be a bad one.
Okay, are you hearing stories about trepidation at the border when it comes to artists who are notoriously political and expressive? And I could see how that might create some concern at a border checkpoint.
Yeah, I'm not only hearing on a daily basis from the artists that are outspoken, because we to artists to be truth tellers and truth seekers and tell us really what they're thinking. We don't have really a scenario where it's shut up and sing. We don't want to hear your political opinion. There's, over 300 artists signed on, various opinion pieces and documents, promoting their view of the NDP here in Canada, but also a lot of anti-Trump measures as well. So it's not just those people that are scared and nervous. It's the people that are just, posting on their private Facebook page, or that they're subtle about it. They're not our version of, say, Sarah Harmer, who has been outspoken about it in the past. It's other artists that are just, scared on by email. I mean, it sounds like it's very 1984, but the fact is, though, that these border guards are checking people's email. They are checking private messages. They are checking, what they posted on Instagram and other social media platforms or on Twitter. They are looking at what kind of shows those people have done to benefit certain groups. I have one artist who is part of the LGBTQIA+ community and has done a lot of benefit concerts for their local, nonprofit association. That's not going to be so highly looked upon if they decide to cross over the border and they get somebody that wants to teach them a lesson that this isn't what some parts of America are going to appreciate.
In a way, it kind of plays into Trump's whole protectionism regime, though, does it not? Because if artists are out of staying out of the country, that would mean that more American artists would get more visibility and more work, I suppose. And I'm not advocating for that. It seems to be playing into his rule book. What are your thoughts?
Absolutely. People shouldn't be surprised at this. Even if you're a small business with a lot of customers that are in the U.S. or even a small segment of the population, don't be surprised if it's going to cost you a little bit more in order to ship that package of your product that's developed and manufactured in Canada. If it starts to cost a little bit more money to ship it to American buyers, Donald Trump and his government have no interest in making sure that one single American dollar goes outside of the country unless he has something to do with it. So that's why these U.S. visas are so expensive. They don't need another $8,000 Canadian for a 5-piece band, but they want to stop Canadian artists from touring America when there's so much American artists there putting money back into their own economy. It's not a surprise that this is happening.
Now, this will inevitably, I think, put some Canadian artists out of work.
Absolutely. I've certainly seen in the last number of months the sheer amount of music festivals that are going all Canadian. It's not so much that they want to shun American or artists from the UK, but they want to show that there is a home for Canadian artists that are here. What's going to be very interesting to see is if the general public wants to see only Canadian artists on there. So, yeah, there's going to be a huge shift, not only in the money that is going to be generated for the music industry, but it could go either way, too.
Interesting chat, Eric. Appreciate your time. Thanks so much.
Thank you so much for having me. We'll talk soon.
All right, take care. Eric Alper, publicist and music commentator. Interesting stuff there, folks. A sign of the times that we're in, for sure. House calls with Dr. John Gillis when we come back. All right, time for House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. If you have a health-related question or concern, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, House Calls with Dr. Gillis, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis has a wealth of experience and knowledge, decades of experience, as a matter of fact, and will do his best to give you a hand via phone if you've got a health-related question or concern. Again, the way to reach us is 902-405-6000. And again, looking forward to taking your calls via your health or health concerns. Also, of course, we will open the phone lines to your general calls between noon and 1 today. Of course, I'm sure that some of you want to talk about what transpired yesterday in Washington between Mark Carney and the President of the United States. Lots of talk online about what happened. And again, we will take your calls between noon and 1 about that. In the meantime, as mentioned, it's time for House Calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you've got a health-related question or concern, give us a buzz, 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, how tempting was it to fly to Toronto today?
Well, very tempting, as I had tickets, but I can't do it.
Is that right, eh? Wow. All right, so what are your thoughts, I guess, first of all, on the goaltending situation? Stoller's going to play tonight, or what are you hearing?
I haven't seen anything afterwards. I mean, the way he walked out certainly didn't look good, but have you seen anything subsequent?
I've heard. They're playing it close to their chest, as you might imagine. So I'm not hearing it, but they haven't ruled out him playing. They let everybody know. You're certainly an expert in this with your rugby experience and the rugby team and concussions. What is the concussion protocol all about, and why is it so important that that's followed so closely?
Well, the big thing is if someone is diagnosed with a concussion, the risk of re-injury or worsening injury is high. So the benchmark is typically a minimum of a week with a gradual return to rest, then gradual activity, then an increased activity. I mean, the protocol is likely different in hockey, but, in rugby, for example, we start with light activity, stronger activity, drills, and then, make people return to, full contact and make sure that they're safe and have no symptoms, before they return to gameplay. And that takes at least a week. Now, again, they may not have diagnosed him with a concussion. It's hard to say. I mean, certainly when you watch someone get hit in the head and come off and barf at the bench, It's not the best thing. But, pretty sure the Leafs have some very good people around them, both on the emergency medicine side, the neurology side, and the neuropsych side. In fact, I've dealt with a couple of these people, off and on. On the rugby side over the years, so I'm quite sure they're not going to put him at risk. If they're even talking about it, it may suggest that they didn't feel he had a concussion.
Yeah, it didn't look like it didn't look like a real violent hit to the head, but that's the thing with a concussion, you just never know what can happen, right? I guess what I'm getting at is I don't think we can read too much into it because it didn't look to be very a violent hit, but that's. I guess if he's symptomatic, right?
That's it. Look, I've seen people just about get knocked unconscious but have very, very few symptoms afterwards. And I've seen, people with very small hits have real symptoms. So it's all over the place.
Yeah, back in the day, of course, I don't know how far you want to go back, but there was a time when concussion protocol didn't exist and players were had the attitude to suck it up and get out there and get your bell rung. Things have changed and for the better, right?
Yeah, absolutely. for the most part, it's taken seriously, and that has trickled down to coaches, administrators, and hopefully players and parents. Although we still see a little bit of the rub some dirt on it and have at it mentality,
sure.
which is not good.
Okay, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls. It's Dr. Gillis. If you have a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. What are your predictions on the game tonight, Dr. Gillis?
I think the Leafs are going to win again at home, but again, the wild card is Stolarz and everybody else, so it's hard to know.
Yeah, Wall, though, it's not as though he's an unknown quantity. He's gotten it done in the playoffs before, though.
He has. He looked a little shaky the other night, but that may have been just because he just came in. And to be fair, there was a couple of crazy goals, like just banked over his shoulder. So who knows? Yeah,
for sure. So do you give the Leafs much of a chance against Florida? A lot of people don't think that they can get it done. Obviously, Leaf fans come by it honestly, but what are your thoughts on the Leafs' chance in the 7-game series?
I still think it's a bit of a coin flip at this point. Tonight will tell us a few things.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. Gillis. Again, if you've got a health-related question or concern, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. I think we'll take a break. We'll be right back.
Facts.
All right, house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you have a health-related question or concern, give us a call at 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Brian's giving us a call. Hello, Brian.
Hi there. How's it going?
Well, you?
Good, man. This is concerning the 2 lost children. It might not be the right time to inquire about that, but they have not posted an Amber Alert because they are quite certain that they were not abducted, correct?
That's correct, yeah.
Okay. They're in their 6th day of the search now. I'm just assuming they would maybe lean the other way and consider back.
Okay. You're cutting in and out, Brian. Can't really hear you. Just how is this question related to Dr. Gillis? Just kind of get to the point, if you will.
I guess it's not. Sorry.
Okay, that's okay. Give us a call during the open hour in about an hour's time. Okay.
All right. Cool. Thanks.
Okay. Thanks a lot.
Sorry.
All right. No sweat. 902-405-6000. Dr. Gillis, do that though. This is a heartbreaking story, and it's we can speculate all day long. At this point, we're waiting for a miracle, right? That's obviously what's going on with this whole situation.
Yeah, it's tragic. If you think of kids that young out in the woods or something for this long, the odds aren't good. But it doesn't make a whole lot of sense, that somebody didn't see them or they haven't been found, and it does make you wonder if something else is at play here. And I just I hope for they and their families that whatever brand of miracle we all believe in, that something positive happens.
Yeah, for sure. But surviving that, it's I guess anyway, we could speculate all day on the situation, but let's just hope for the best and leave it at that. That's all we can do. 902-405-6000. Give us a call if you have a health-related question or concern. Dr. Gillis will do his best to give you a hand. I know that we talk about measles every week, but anyway, here we go again. The province says it's found a case of measles here in HRM. Dr. Robert Strang delivered some information. Says measles is not an illness to take lightly. What advice can you give people? We have a member of our staff here actually, who's in his 30s who got a measles vaccination. What advice do you give, Dr. Gillis?
Well, really people need to check if they need a booster. Some people do. Some people don't. It's, based on what you've had in the past and, your date of birth. I think the general rule of thumb is, if you were born before 1970, you don't. But if you're in that window between 70 and I think 96, that you likely need a second shot. And, some people haven't had that. So it's worth checking that with your healthcare provider if you have one. It's certainly true that, this is a long time ago for people. We don't necessarily keep the records, or the records were a piece of paper that mom had or dad had, and, it's who knows where it is. So generally speaking, the reco is, if you're not sure, get a second shot, boost yourself. And the same goes for your kids. Make sure your kids had what they were supposed to have. And, this is the ultimate in frustration that, we're seeing this when there's just no bloody need for it. I mean, measles was dead, gone, and dusted, like the Leafs hopes to win in the Cup for most of these years.
Yeah,
maybe. And we just need to be vigilant and do what we can to catch up on the vaccines and try to shut this thing down.
Fair enough. 902-405-6000. Shirley, hello.
Yes, good morning. Dr. Gillis, I've had the shingles vaccine, and I've had the measles vaccine many years ago as a child. But my uncle broke out with the shingles a week ago. Am I safe to be around him, even though I had the shingles vaccine probably 4 or 5 years ago?
I mean, you should be protected. Nothing's 100%, but if you had the new one, the Shingrix, which is 2 doses, I think they say it's 90% effective. I would.
Sorry, I had mine about 4 or 5 years ago. I only had the one shot.
Yeah, well, that's unusual. The new vaccine has been out for 8 or 9 years. So it should have been Shingrix, the newer one, which is meant to be 2 shots. I would check on that. I can't think of why anyone would give you the old one 4 years ago, but who knows? Maybe check on it. So the question is, what's your level of protection, and are you safe to be around them? If you're not fully immunized, you could get shingles. I mean, the odds are fairly low if you're partially immunized. If you're not in direct contact with the blisters, the lesions, your risk is lower, but it's not zero. So it's a combination.
It's been a week. It's been a week since he's had them, and it's all scabbed now. He's taken a medication, and he's also had cream, or he's still putting cream on it, and his medication is done. He goes next Tuesday back to the doctor, and I'm just going to go in and, help him out a little bit. So I'm just wondering if he's in his TV room, I'm safe to be anywhere else, sir.
Yeah, no, you're probably good. I mean, they say that, and you alluded to it, that the contagious part kind of goes away when the blisters are crusted over, and that usually takes about a week. You're probably there. And again, if you exercise reasonable cautions and you're immunized or partially immunized, you should be fine. But again, the risk is not zero. Shingles is not really contagious in the classic sense of like we think of the flu.
Okay.
It's not like if I cough on you that you're going to get it. If you're handling the spots, it's really, a lot of us, if not all of us, get exposed to the zoster virus. It's based on, our immune system and how we're doing at the time as to whether we get it. So it's a little different that way. So just keep that in mind.
And the measles, should I go get another shot for my measles since I've had it since I was like 4 or 5 years old?
How old are you?
3 or whatever. 60.
Yeah, no, if you're born before 1970, the data say you don't need another one.
Oh, okay.
Okay,
right.
Thanks, Shirley.
Thanks
for the call.
It's good to know. Okay, thank you, guys. Have a great day.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. James, hello.
Hi, thanks. Without wanting in any way to be inappropriate or morbid, about the children who may be out in the woods, there are heroic stories of miners surviving underground for quite a while. If they are indeed out in the woods and have access to some water, liquid, leaves, whatever, how long could they survive without eating, quote, proper food?
Well, it's, that's a hard question to answer. The real issue with being in the woods, even at this time of year, and for little kids, is exposure. I mean, they could probably be without food for north of a week, but it's dehydration and exposure. But it's also, if it was any of us, we were stuck in the woods, we'd try to make a shelter. We would try to find water. We would do these things because we have that, perhaps some of that knowledge. It's hard to apply that to I think, are they 4 and 6?
Yeah, 4 and 6.
That's probably the most concerning part. I mean, are they going to know how to do any of that stuff? And, again, the risk of even being around water, you come across a brook and, you don't want someone to fall in, get soaked, have things worse. It's just, it's tough to contemplate.
Okay, I appreciate your expertise.
Thanks, James. Appreciate the call. Take care. All right. 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us for house calls to Dr. John Gillis. Again, 902-405-6000. And let's see here. We're going to go back to the phones in just a sec. Again, 902-405-6000. If you'd like to ask Dr. John Gillis a question concerning your health. Matt's just done the same thing. Matt, hello.
Oh, hello.
Hi there. Go ahead.
Hi, that was really fast.
Yeah, no sweat. Go ahead.
I got a question for Dr. Gillis.
Yeah, go for it.
So I've had my family doctor for, 7 or 8 years now. And lately I've been having a lot of health problems, last year and a half. And I've found that he's very reluctant to do any testing. Kind of like it's a long time to get in to see him. And then we don't really do anything. And my conditions keep going. And recently I've been trying to get a specific product, and he keeps making me come back in just to come in. And it's really harming things. And I'm wondering what your advice is. I'd like to drop him as a family physician, maybe switch over to Maple for a bit and put myself on the list. And I'm wondering, is that possible? And if so, what are the pros and cons?
That's a good question.
Well, you can do whatever you want, right? I mean, you don't have to go. I mean, the burden of making an appointment is to you. So if you don't want to see this person, you can not do so. Maple works well for certain things, but it is not ideal for working up complex problems or things that require an examination or necessarily for follow-up. So, I mean, you can certainly give it a try. Without, effectively dropping the person you have, without knowing, what's going on with you, it's hard to know deeper than that. I mean, if you're having serious health problems, you may need to go to the ER and try to attack it that way. Nobody likes doing it, but Maple, you can't get a CT scan or a blood test, through a computer. So, at the risk of stating the obvious.
I was told if I didn't have a family physician, then Nova Scotia Health would put it in, and you could get in to see specialists and get blood work and stuff done.
Yeah, I mean they will order stuff, but I mean getting in to see a specialist is not a quick process. I mean, some people have had success with getting blood tests ordered on Maple. The issue is the follow up and such. You're going to get a different person every time, and if someone on Maple is willing to send a referral to a specialist, that doesn't take away the wait times. That's
fair. It's just right now I don't get anything. Is there a way to put myself in to get a new family doctor?
I think you could call the Department of Health. I think there's a line where people sign up to get on the list, or a web form of some sort, and you could I guess theoretically ask them and say, look, I'm leaving this person, or I'm not with this person anymore, and see if they'll put you back on the list. No one's ever asked me that, to be honest, but you could try that.
Yeah, it's just a problem. Anyways, I won't keep you anymore. Thank you very much.
Okay, Matt. Good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis. If you have a health-related question or concern, give us a buzz. 902-405-6000. We've got Dr. Gillis to the top of the hour, and we got some room for you as well. Again, 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
Facts.
House calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. The way to reach us is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Joseph. Hello, Joseph.
Hi there. How you doing?
I'm doing well.
I just wanted to add something to Dr. John's response as far as Maple is concerned. I just went to Maple, when was it? On Monday, I think it was. And it was very convenient to get blood work requisition, which I couldn't get from my hypertension doctor. It was a very good service.
Oh, that's good. And like I said, I've heard mixed things that sometimes people are able to get that done depending on what the issue is. Sometimes they're not. And look, if it's available and the follow-up is there, I think it's great. I'm very supportive of that sort of thing.
Go ahead. I don't have a family doctor, so it was, and I couldn't get into trying to speak to my hypertension doctor, trying to get a hold of him for the last 3 weeks. And I was unsuccessful. And then I went on to the Maple, and, it was very convenient, very, they said they were going to call me in a half an hour, and they did what they said they were going to do. And, I was able to get the blood requisition, which is great.
Yeah, no, it's good. And like I said, I'm all for that. As long as that follow-up is there, that's great news, and I'm glad you're able to get that access.
Thanks, Joseph. Appreciate it.
No problem.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Tim, hello.
Hi, Dr. Gillis, or Todd, too. I usually run a few times a week, but last Friday, my Achilles tendon got irritated, and it just seems to be slow to heal. What should I be doing?
Yeah, Achilles tendons are, I've had Achilles problems myself. It's sometimes related to activity, sometimes related to footwear. So, rest is good. Anti-inflammatories are good. Sometimes putting a heel lift in people's shoes can be very helpful to change the angle. I often recommend, if it's not settling down, people go to see a physiotherapist and just get an assessment as to what the case was. In my case, I used to wear rugby cleats that were way too flat, and I got to the point where I barely walked down the stairs. But I changed the cleats I wear. I put a heel lift in them, and did a lot of stretching of the Achilles as well, which is important. Keeping your calf stretched and your Achilles stretched. And look, you can easily look that up online, how to do an Achilles stretch, as opposed to me trying to describe it to you. Just keeping yourself moving is important, and keeping that flexibility. So hopefully that helps. And usually they settle down fairly quickly. It's just sometimes they can drag. And trust me, I've been there.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks for the call. Good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. Bill, hello.
Yeah, hello. Thank you for allowing me on there, Dr. Gillis, and the host as well.
Sure.
My question is, I don't have a family doctor, and I'm experiencing some chest pain, and whenever my wife and I are engaged in adult activities afterwards, I have severe chest pain, shortness of breath. I've went on this Heart and Stroke Foundation, and I meet 4 of the 5 check marks for stroke and early warning signs, and I'm wondering how I can get in to see a cardiologist. I have a pain management specialist, but I don't want to be managing. He doesn't want to be managing my medical, and I don't blame him. He's there for one reason. So is there anything you could recommend for me to be able to get in to see a cardiologist?
Yeah, if you're having symptoms like that on a regular basis, you need to not put too fine a point on it. Get your arse to the ER and get checked right away. That's concerning if you're having pain with every time you have activity. That's not a symptom of strokes, that's a symptom of cardiac problems. It may not be that, but that's a very concerning story. So I would get your arse to the ER.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Gillis.
All right. Good luck. Take care. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us for house calls with Dr. John Gillis if you have a health-related question or concern. Again, 902-405-6000. And nobody wants to go to the emergency room, obviously, Dr. Gillis, but sometimes it's just necessary, and you got to bite the bullet, right?
Yeah, that's it. Look, we see this, we see all extremes. We see people taking ambulances to the ER because they get a sore toe. And we see people with, serious problems, that should be addressed that aren't coming because they don't want to wait. And that's, both of those things are concerning. People, ambulance wait times are up because of frivolous use, but really it's the people that really need to be there that aren't coming because of wait times. That's where stuff slips through the cracks. It doesn't slip through the cracks, it just gets missed because people aren't coming in. And, we always encourage people, if you're having concerning symptoms, but particularly if you're older, chest pain, headaches, signs of stroke, anything like that, don't hesitate. And we do get frustrated when we see people who've 20-year-olds who've had a cough for a couple hours call an ambulance, which happens. Yes, before the hate starts, it is theoretically possible for someone who's 20 to get really ill. It is, but it's statistically unlikely. So we ask people to choose wisely and make good decisions, and most people do. But ultimately, people who are very sick, older, have concerning symptoms like we just heard there, that needs to get checked, and it shouldn't wait.
Fair. 902-405-6000. I saw this story on the CTV website. I thought I'd ask you your opinion on it. The headline, it says, "Have you traveled abroad for surgery, or are you considering it? We want to hear from you." And the story is kind of it deals with people who are traveling abroad and some of the cautionary tales, I suppose, for this type of thing. Dr. Gillis, what any kind of broad strokes advice do you have for people who are considering getting treatments abroad, Mexico or wherever it might be? What are the pros and cons? What are some of the warnings or some of the upside to it?
Well, I mean, the upside can be access and cost. The downside can be lack of quality control, challenges for follow-up, all those things. And, it's very hard to know if you're getting quality. It's very easy for, either individually or for a clinic or for, with help from companies who do this sort of thing to make anybody sound good on the internet, reviews and such. If you are going to go overseas, reviews from people or experiences from people who have been there, who have, had an experience with a particular surgeon or, treatment is important. Understanding what you're getting. I mean, if we recall the miracle of the MS liberation, procedure a few years ago, where it was curing everybody and people were spending tens of thousands of dollars overseas to do this, but yet it came out fairly quickly that this wasn't real, and the craze stopped, but it didn't stop people from having expensive and risky instrumentation in their brains. Yeah. And did it possibly help some people? Maybe. Was there a placebo effect? Maybe. But you just have to be very careful, what you're looking for. We see a lot of it with, patients with cancer and, promises of cures and experimental treatments overseas. I mean, when my old man had brain cancer, 16 years ago, I guess, certainly it crosses your mind. But, what we came to is, and not that we were against having an open mind, but, some of what was offered or promised out there just didn't make any sense. But, my sister and I had the, I guess the benefit of having a medical lens and some experience to sift through this stuff. But it's tough if you're unwell, or you're, particularly if you or your loved one is dying of something serious. It's you want to get treatment, you want to consider all the options, but we also don't want people, being taken advantage of and given false hope or frankly ripped off. It's tough to sift through it.
And it's safe to say that there'd be predatory practices when people are vulnerable, to your point, right? People are desperate, and you're going to have people out there who unfortunately are going to take advantage of that situation. That said, though, to your point, there are times when it would be advantageous and has been advantageous and reputable and all that goes with it. So that's, I suppose, somehow researching it beyond just kind of looking for reviews online might be. Any advice? Should you call the clinic, talk to the doctor? What can you do to protect yourself?
Yeah, I think all of those things. And look, know where you're going, know what the record is. I mean, I was in Merida, Mexico a few years on vacation. Merida is a city in Mexico on the Yucatan, which is really known as one of the medical centers of Mexico. And, their hospitals are state of the art. They are well renowned for providing excellent quality service. And, it's unfair and very judgy to just assume that, all doctors in another country are bad. Of course they're not. In fact, probably most of them are excellent. It's just, when you see the advertisements and the cost, it is hard to know. It's one thing to lose money. It's another thing to have something botched and put you at higher risk. So it is hard. But yes, I mean, look at the clinic, look how long they've been operating, what is their track record, what is the education, and, seek help with that. Talk to your own doctor and say, look, I can't wait 18 months for a hip replacement. They could do it in Mexico in a month or less. What do you think? And look, it's a good option for some people. You just have to make sure you do the background.
Fair enough. Good advice. 902-405-6000. That's what it reaches for house calls. We get the doctor to the top of the hour. If you've got a question, now is a great opportunity for you to have it addressed. Again, 902-405-6000. House calls continues when we come back.
Thanks.
All right, House Calls continues with Dr. John Gillis. So it reaches is 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. James, hello.
Hi. Second time today, I admit, but I think this might be in the public interest. I had surgery on my right eye yesterday to remove cataracts. Everything went well, very professional, all good. But I've been given my instructions, but I thought the public your listeners might want to know what's the normal recovery profile and perhaps success rate. In other words, is it a good thing to get done if your eye doctor tells you, and how long does it take to get back in action?
Yeah, so normally the swelling goes down in a few days, but it can take a few weeks for everything to return to normal. I mean, that's very dependent on the individual case. Some cataracts are more complicated than others. It depends on the lens that's used. It depends on if there's other eye problems or other health problems. But usually people heal fairly quickly. Their vision gets pretty good in a few days, and by 4 to 6 weeks they're doing well. I guess I would turn back on you. What did your surgeon say? What did they tell you?
Oh, we lost James, actually. The call dropped, Dr. Gillis, but nonetheless.
Well, that's generally the idea.
Yeah. Okay, fair enough. 902-405-6000. Greg, hello.
How you doing, guys? Doctor, I just got a question. My mother is, I think I told you about my mother. She's 87. She got COPD, emphysema, and a pacemaker. So now, she's having the COPD is really coming into focus. It's really hurting more. They found a spot on her lung and 2 spots on her liver. So they want to do all these things and everything else test. And I said to my sister, do we really need to do this? I mean, at her age, are we going to put her through all this stuff just to see what they can do? I really, we're not trying to be selfish here, but I just think, how much more can we put her through that stuff? And I really don't think we should. So we told my mom, and my mom pretty well, yeah, I guess it's probably good. So, is that a good idea, or should we just keep on going and trying to find out what's going on? But really, at her age, can she take all this stuff?
Yeah, I mean, that's a very personal and individual decision, and a lot of people don't have that conversation, and they should. I mean, we see people, at the hospital more often than I'd like, where families are expecting, somebody who's in their 80s who's, rail thin, sick, has cancer, and they still want us to do CPR and all the stuff, and it's inhumane in some of these cases.
Yeah. So what we've done, my sister, my mother agreed to it. She said, yeah, we're not going to do that. So I just don't want to be selfish here and be, my own and my sister's thing, but we just don't want to see somebody put through all that stuff, and for what? You know what I mean?
So I guess the only other thing I would say is it depends what you're talking about. If you're talking about some scans for information, and the information is this is cancer, do you want surgery or not, or chemo, then you can say no then. If the information is, well, actually this is an infection and then we can do something about it that's not invasive, so sometimes going a little further is okay as long as you're open-minded about what the possibilities are. It's not wrong to say, look, we don't want to know, that's okay. That's reasonable. But I would just sort of, have a chat with the doctor involved or the doctors involved and say, look, what are the possibilities here? If we find a cancer, we're not, mom doesn't want to have surgery. Is there any point in going further? They might say to you, that's reasonable. They might say, yeah, but we should rule out an infection or an abscess, which we could actually treat. That might be reasonable. So just finding that balance. Is that fair?
So, yeah, that's fair. No, I appreciate that. I mean, like I said to my sister, I said, she's good, but she's in Montreal, so she's going to talk to the doctor tomorrow, the next day, and that's why I say, here's the questions you got to ask. because, like I said, we don't want to put her through any more undue stress and harm and all this other stuff, right? Because it's just not fun. But thank you for your opinion. I appreciate it. I value it. Thank you very much.
Thanks, Craig.
Okay.
All right, take care. Dr. John Gillis, that's great for this week. Anything you wanted to pass along? I know you had a rugby game last week that we wanted to plug, but we didn't get a chance. Anything you wanted to, in the rugby world, that you wanted to mention, or what's going on in that?
Well, the rugby game went well. We played Ontario at Dal on Saturday and won. Unfortunately, I was meant to be plugging a game against Quebec this Saturday, but our friends from Quebec decided they couldn't make it. So unfortunately, that's not going to happen this week, but we'll be back with that team, the Atlantic Privateers, playing at the Wanderers grounds on June 22nd, and we'll get some info about that big finals day. So
okay.
Thanks for asking.
Okay, great stuff. Talk soon. Thank you. Talk next week, Dr. Gillis. Take care at 9. Okay, thanks again for Dr. John Gillis. Thanks for all the calls, everybody. By the way, speaking of calls, it's time now to take your calls in general. What are your thoughts on what's going on in the world, including yesterday? In Washington, of course, Mark Carney met with the President of the United States, Donald Trump, and it was not a combative exchange, that's for sure. Some would say, and I would say it was cordial. Now, depending on what side of the ledger you fall on, some people think that was exactly what should have been expected and what we should have expected from Mark Carney. Others think that he missed the mark. What are your thoughts on the exchange? Personally, and I talked with Roy Turnbull about this earlier in the show, I'm not sure what else he could have done. I don't think you go in there with guns blazes and both barrels and put him on guard. I don't know that would achieve anything. As a matter of fact, it probably would be the opposite. But what's your take on what transpired in the Oval Office yesterday between the Prime Minister and the President of the United States? Do you think that I'm off the mark? Do you think that Mark Carney handled the situation well, or do you feel as though he could have done something differently? If so, what could he have done differently? Again, if he would have walked in there and been combative, what would have the result would have been? And I would suggest it could have gone off the rails extremely easily, very, very easily. We know how volatile and unpredictable Donald Trump is. And I don't know that, again, Mark Carney could have done anything differently. I know that it's tough for him to sit there and listen to some of the things that Donald Trump talked about, misinformation, and a lot of it was clearly empirically wrong, what he said. Not even hard to choose, not even hard to find out, to fact check. But those talking points that Donald Trump continues to discuss, again, Mark Carney sat there and he really couldn't do much more, in my humble opinion. But maybe you think I'm dead wrong. And if so, let's hear from you. What are your thoughts on that? 902-405-6000. Of course, you can talk about whatever else you'd like to get into. The Andrew Scheer is the interim leader of the Conservative caucus again. He will be the attack dog when Parliament rises. What are your thoughts on kind of Back to the Future with Andrew Scheer, who's already had his kick at the cannon's leadership of the party? And I think 2 leaders ago. What are your thoughts on Scheer? Or whatever else you've got in your mind. Again, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. We get an open hour when we come back. All right, taking your calls, 902-405-6000. That is the way to reach us. Again, 902-405-6000. What are your thoughts on whatever's going on in the world, or in your community, or in your general vicinity? Again, 902-405-6000. Obviously, a lot of people talking yesterday and today still about Mark Carney and Donald Trump's exchange in the Oval Office. Kind of my takeaway is I'm not sure what else Carney could have done. I know that some of you out there, I'm receiving emails from people saying, what happened to elbows up and all the tough talk and all that goes with that. Look, folks, a lot of that is bravado, let's face it. And when you're campaigning, what you do and say is not always what happens in the real world. And when dealing with somebody like Trump, It's a dance, folks. It's unfortunately it is what it is. He's volatile. He's unpredictable. Literally and figuratively, the lion's den is what Carney walked into yesterday. And if he would have gone in there aggressive, and I just think it would have been a disaster in a hurry. And when all is said and done, what's best for the country, what's best for Canada moving forward, it sucks that you got to deal with this guy this way. It really does. And it speaks to the situation that we're in. Diplomacy is not an easy thing at the best of times, let alone under these circumstances. So what are your thoughts on what transpired yesterday? And how do you think this will impact the relationship between the two leaders moving forward? How might Carney have handled the situation differently? I know emotionally, folks, you might want to have seen him go in there and give it to Trump or whatever vernacular terminology you want to use. That might have felt good emotionally, viscerally. I don't know that it would have done anything substantively other than hurt the country. That's just my take. What's yours? You can get into that or whatever else you'd like to talk about. Again, 902-405-6000. Rent control. This is front and center again. Yesterday, the Associate Deputy Minister of Service, Nova Scotia, has acknowledged some landlords in the province are abusing fixed-term leases. However, Gary O'Toole says the department needs to understand what the long-term consequences will be before any changes can be made to tenancy law. We kicked off the show talking with Claudia Chender, the leader of the NDP, about all of this, and she says, I'm not sure what else you need to know or what else you need to understand when it comes to consequences. And she says it's pretty clear that fixed-term leases are resulting in far too many people being evicted, and calls it a loophole to get around the rent cap, which is at 5%. Tomorrow we'll chat with Kevin Russell of the Investment Properties Association and get his take on all of this. What are your thoughts on the state of rents in Nova Scotia? And have you been evicted with the fixed term lease in play? Of course, the fixed term lease goes. It's a 12-month lease, and at the end of it, the landlord or the tenant, for that matter, can exit that agreement. And I've talked to many property owners, not many, but some property owners who say that it's necessary, it's integral. Without it, they would be unable to maneuver at all when it comes to renovating apartments or getting rid of bad tenants, for that matter. Of course, the other side of it is that it's definitely been abused. To what degree, we don't know. But what's your experience been with a fixed-term lease or evictions on both sides of the aisle? Whether you be a renter or a property owner. If you're a property owner and you feel as though they're needed and necessary, give us a call and tell us why you feel that way. Again, 902-405-6000. All right, so let's kick it off with Mike. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Todd.
Hi there.
What do you think about what's going on in the by-election? Have you seen that?
What do you mean, what's going on with it?
Well, I just come right from a CBC website or a CBC article. There's a protest group planning on putting 200 names on that ballot.
Yeah, they did the same thing in the riding of Carleton already. I think it's I think it's election interference, quite honestly.
100%. And I mean, they didn't say they were doing it, I don't think, in the first main election, did they? But they're broadcasting that they're doing it in this one. Like, they should be shut down.
Well, they say that they're allowing that it's betterment of democracy. Again, I think it's targeted. It's obviously targeted. They targeted the Carleton riding, and I think that it's election interference. I just see no other way around it.
Yeah, I agree 100%. I can't believe Elections Canada is letting this happen.
Yeah, well, I guess following the letter of the law, the rules are that if you do what's required to get on the ballot, then you're allowed to be on the ballot. But to me, I think it's absolutely, this long ballot is, at least in this instance, people will have warning about it, and people who want to vote for Poilievre can make sure that they check the right box, I suppose.
Yeah, no, I agree, but it's just, I mean, it's flat out interference as far as I'm concerned. But I guess they're following the letter of their law.
Yeah, exactly. But I agree with you, Mike. I think that there's no other way to put it, I suppose. It's interference. Thanks for the call. Take care. 902-405-6000. Joe, hello.
Hi, Todd. How are you today?
I'm well. You?
I'm, well, I could be better, but thanks for asking. I don't know if this is an appropriate call. There's so many issues to deal with, but mine is, I'm going to address a couple of them really quickly, unfairly too quickly, but Donald Trump is mentally unfit to hold office. That's my firm belief. He's not competent. I don't know what the hell he's doing in running one of the largest countries in the world. It totally bewilders me. But and rent control. I live in an apartment building that's run horrendously. It's a company. It's one of the larger ones. Maybe one of the largest. And they're constantly crossing the line in what they're to do and allowed to do and not to do. So those are conversations that are going to go on for weeks and months and years. They have been. And I don't see a whole lot of things having a lot of impact on it, other than having the developers have been given almost free rein, and they do whatever they can to usurp any kind of rules or regulations. I've been living in this building for almost 14 years, and it's elevators aren't working, and you're locked out of the building. It's a nightmare kind of situation. Having said that, that's not why I called. I called and I spoke to Vanessa about this. I'd like to reach out to anyone out there that has had to deal with the Nova Scotia Health Authority, a rehab program. I'm having a real problem with them, and I'm running in circles here today trying to call government departments and being sent hitherto and yon and not having any luck. So if there's anyone out there that can help me and give me some information, I'm a senior and pensioned off, and I bought a product from them yesterday, and about 40 minutes after I bought it, I realized it wasn't a good fit. It wasn't a good product. I tried to get them to give my money back, and they're refusing. And so if there's anyone out there that experiences and can give me some insight, I left my number with Vanessa. I would appreciate it.
Okay, Joe, best of luck. We'll see if we can help you out.
Thank you.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Dave, hello.
Yes, good afternoon, Todd. Thank you for taking my call.
Sure.
Just like to touch base on the Prime Minister and the President yesterday, pardon me.
Sure.
You got to admit, it must be very intimidating being in the office there, the White House, with Trump and his heavyweights there, if you will.
Absolutely. They call it the Lion's Den, and I would say it is the Lion's Den.
Well, you said that, I think, and I agree totally. And you got all the media in there, and I will say Trump brings in media.
Yeah.
And he confronts hardball questions, right? He does. And he may linger on and get diverted a little bit, but I thought Mark Carney was a little fidgety. He sort of wanted to say some things, and Trump also let him speak. Like maybe, hey, media, talk to the Prime Minister, right? Do you have any questions you want to field to him? But everybody wants to talk to Trump.
Yeah.
And a lot of it was, of course, about Canada, the 51st state and the tariffs. I was impressed how Trump actually, I'm thinking he more buttered up Carney. Like he said he was the better debater, and he was appreciative of that. I think he appreciates his success in business and banking because they both have similarities in those fields, correct?
Yeah.
Real estate.
Right. That's right. Yeah.
They're both, in the world of business. They're both kind of outside of politics when they both entered politics, I guess, if you will.
Yeah,
totally. I mean, look, Justin Trudeau was a drama teacher. Reagan was he not in Hollywood?
He was an actor
or something like that.
He was an actor, yeah.
Yeah. Arnold Schwarzenegger, he was the governor of California. So what do you need to be a politician, right? To you just have to play the game and figure things out. I thought Trump actually buttered him up a lot, maybe for the kill. Let's hope not. But I think also Carney, I think I wish he had a little bit more to say there, and he tiptoed around everything and, flattered Trump a wee bit, I guess. But I don't know, I'm not a big Carney fan. I'm not a big Liberal fan, but I do hope the success, and I think he was okay in with Trump there. I mean, what are you going to do? You know what I mean?
That's it. What's the alternative?
And what was he there for anyways?
Yeah,
I mean, are they
right.
going to get resolved? Are they going to get resolved, or it was just politics or whatever? But I think it went okay, but I'm still very suspect, if you will.
Mm-hmm.
I think the biggest thing that we have in this country is possible separation, not through Quebec. We've had that in the past, right? They've always threatened to leave if they didn't get what they want. But I think we've got a very concerning thing going on in Alberta right now, and Trump sees that. He watches our Canadian politics very seriously. He is very, he's very knowledgeable about what goes on around the world. Every nook and cranny, he really does. And if he doesn't pick things up, his advisors do. But all I could say it was the lion's den, and I admired Carney. He did okay. Yeah. He did okay. I don't, like you said, what do you expect, right? What do you expect? But I think Trump actually has a plan still, and he certainly didn't rule out the 51st state, and that. The line that was drawn there, whatever he said, just this artificial line was drawn up there. But, again, Alberta's going to have a lot to do with everything, or the West, Saskatchewan, Alberta, right? So I think I wouldn't want to be in Carney's shoes. I wouldn't want to be in any prime minister's shoes right now, because we are in a situation, we don't want to do business. People don't want to go, you hear Canadians, I'm not going to go across the border. I can't stand them anymore. Mm-hmm. Blah, blah, blah. Well, where are you going to go? Are we going to go to Europe? And, trading with Europe is a lot more grinding rather than crossing the border here. So, yeah, no, I think his performance was okay, no doubt about it. I think he was pretty smooth, but I'm very suspect of this whole thing, to be honest with you. Is my opinion, Todd, on that. So
yeah, okay, Dave, fair enough, fair comments. Appreciate the call.
Cheers.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. What are your thoughts on all this, folks? Give us a buzz. 902-405-6000. Your calls continue when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, way to reach us, the drill. 902-405-6000. Again, 902-405-6000. Rob, hello.
Hey, Todd, how are you today?
I'm well, you?
Oh, good, thanks. Mr. Carney, his party certainly wasn't my choice on this last vote, but watching closely yesterday with him and Trump, I thought to myself, wow, okay, I thought Mr. Carney did well, and, kind of accepting of him being unknown, but things certainly could have got sideways real fast if we had the wrong personality in that room with Trump. There was lots of room with rope to hang yourself. So I thought Carney, like a little puppet there on the side, looked kind of cute when he was kind of like, well, look, Mr. President, let me say something, kind of thing. Yeah. But he at least did that and did it well, I thought myself, Todd. So I agree with you wholeheartedly. I think it went well myself. So.
Well, what about those who suggested he should have gone in there kind of guns blazing? What are your thoughts? Again, I think you already spoke to it. It's too unpredictable and too volatile, and it's a no-win situation, really.
Yeah, and there's no reason to get into any of that stuff. This whole, this talk about guns blazing and all this other whatever arms up stuff, and, like that, like you say, that's just all, rah-rah, sis-boom, boss stuff locally. But when brass tacks gets down, right, there's no room for that kind of talk at all, right? Trump talks like that, and I don't know, it seems to resonate with certain crowds out there as we see today, but certainly not for us as Canadians, right, to have us be represented like that at all. I, wouldn't agree with. So.
Okay, thanks for the call, Rob. Appreciate it. Take care.
Thank you.
All right, 902-405-6000. Dave, hello. Hi, Dave.
Than they've been for the last 12 years.
All right, put Dave on hold and go back to him. 902-405-6000. Sean, hello.
Hey, Todd. I just want to talk about this Carney meeting yesterday. I disagree. I think it was kind of a joke. Carney's supposed to be this big banker, high leveraged kind of deal making, head of the table, if you will, kind of thing. And he sat there like a mouse, like a scared mouse. I thought that was the first and kind of the first thing that threw me off. He didn't seem like he was able to speak. I mean, Trump spoke for 29 minutes and Carney spoke for about 3. With his answers weren't detailed. Like I just found it wasn't terrible. And I think the first thing he could have done is when he got out of was greeted at the limousine there in the pictures, I think he could have not thrown up the Trump fist bump. Maybe he could have put his elbow up, like he made the seniors walking around with the signs or walking up and down the street like they're doing the chicken dance. Like I think he could have done that instead. And I think he could have maybe pushed back. I mean, he didn't have to go in there guns blazing. I don't agree with that either, because obviously it's not the situation to do that in. But I think you could have stood up for your country a little more, especially the automotive section, when he basically said, no, like, that's it. It's gone. It's coming out of Canada. We'll wait till the tariffs do its thing. I think he could have interjected there and said something along the lines of, like, well, we'll talk about that. We're in the works of making new deals, and maybe that's something we can negotiate. Let's not completely cross it out, right? Like, and I just think when he was going on about the 51st state, and then Carney said Canada's not for sale, and then you can hear Trump kind of mock him in the back, like, never say never. Like, Carney could have used that exact thing, could have said to Trump when he was going on with about the auto industry and how he's going to cripple it. I think he could have said, like, well, never say never, kind of like Trump did. I just think he was out of his element and he was portrayed, and now the media is like, he didn't get any sound bites for you guys to pump him up, but it's all like, oh, I don't think he did that bad. I don't think he did that bad. When he basically made fun of our country and did the same thing, and Carney didn't stand up, didn't speak up, didn't do any of that. So,
well, Sean, you used the term he could have a lot there. I'm not sure how many times you said. I'm not criticizing you, by the way, but yeah, he could have done anything, right? You could have, but what would have been effective, and what would the result have been, Sean? I guess, and I get listen, I get your frustration. I get it from a Canadian perspective. Yeah, we'd love to see somebody go in there and be perhaps a little more boisterous, a little more vocal. I don't know, but it's. I think you would agree, Sean, that if Carney would have even broached aggressiveness, it would have deteriorated quickly, and I don't think that would have been effective in that setting. Sean, do you agree or disagree with that?
I mean, I guess, but like they pumped him up. Like you go through the last 5 weeks of Carney's events he did, the rallies, it was all, I'm the man, like elbows up, we're taking him out, with relationships over. And it just like, then he gets there and he's all praising them about what he's done to the oil industry, the fentanyl.
Yeah, it was a little. I would say it was a little over the top in saying that he's a transformative president. I think that was unnecessary, and I would say it bordered on, if not passed over the line of kissing his ass. Really,
kissing the ring. This is what I'm saying. Like, and this was the guy the media told us and told all these seniors, Carney's the guy to deal with it. I'm sorry, but does Trump even know that Chrystia Freeland is still in the cabinet? He didn't even stick up for her.
Yeah, I hear you. I hear you. He
didn't even stick up for her, and she's close to him and has been working with him for however many years he's been a part of this thing. And he has the nerve to say that in front of the cabinet members that are all still the same and are friends with Chris. He didn't even have the courage to say, well, she's not here. Like, let's leave her out of it. Like,
I guess
nothing.
Sean, listen, I guess what I would defer to, and we'll leave it. I have to leave it at this.
For sure.
Is that it would have deteriorated rapidly if Carney did anything at all, and I think that speaks to the how volatile that situation is. But I hear what you're saying, Sean. And I'm not discrediting what you're saying. Yeah, quickly.
He shouldn't have went down there. He should have stuck to the, I'll do it on my terms. I'll do it on my terms, and I'll wait for him, or we'll wait till the deal's done. He shouldn't have went down there, because honestly, like, I was hoping Carney could be the guy to deal with Trump, but he shouldn't have went down there. I guess.
Okay, Sean. Appreciate the call.
Thanks, Todd.
All right, take care. 902-405-6000. Look, I just can't help but defer. And it was cringy. It was when he was running down Chrystia Freeland and all of that. I get it. There was some cringe moments there, and you could tell that Carney was uncomfortable. But again, I just don't know what he could have. I suppose what he should have done differently, and what the result would have been. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls, 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us again, 902-405-6000. Tom says this via email, then we'll go back to the phone. Says, Carney did kiss the ring at the beginning, which is a bit over the top, but we have no idea what was said behind closed doors, and until we do know, I'm sticking with our Prime Minister did okay considering what he was dealing with. And I suppose that's kind of where I defer. I just really can't conceptualize a scenario in which Carney could have done anything really much different. I think could have. Sure, he could have done it and could have done it differently. But what would the result have been? I mean, Trump is on a hair trigger, literally, especially in that environment. He would have none of any type of aggressive language or pushback from Carney, unfortunately. But it is what it is. And the suggestion that Sean made that he shouldn't have gone there, well, look, you have to try and establish some type of relationship with this guy. It's just you have to play your cards as best you can. And unfortunately, it's a very difficult situation. Goes without saying. So Carney, I suppose, did what he could have done, and what I guess we couldn't have expected or shouldn't have expected much different. But look, to say that when he was campaigning, he was talking tough, yeah, that's right. That's what people do when they campaign. But let's face it, folks. People, when they're campaigning, politicians often bravado and the stage and trying to entice people to vote for you, you're gonna handle things differently than when you're elected and you're dealing with diplomacy. Call it two-faced, call it what you will. I don't know, but I defer to Carney did as well, I think, as I would have expected, and I'm not sure that he should have done anything any differently. Could he have done things differently? Absolutely could have. What would the result have been? I think it would have been a complete disaster. 902-405-6000. That's the way to reach us. Dave, hello.
Hi, Todd. How you doing?
I'm well. You?
Oh, not too bad. Good, thank you.
Great.
I sorry to say I agree with you 100% about Carney meeting with Trump. I mean, I thought he was very sensible, and you don't do and solve everything all in one meeting. I'm sure they're going to meet again.
Yeah.
You don't want to be a hothead and say, "Oh, I want this and we need that." And I thought he handled it very well. Anyway.
Okay. Fair enough.
I want to call about this rental issue about long-time tenants being evicted, the stories you hear about it, and being replaced by new immigrants, and possibly even the government subsidizing the rents for them. So that's why the landlords jack the rents way up after they get the new tenants in. I could be wrong, but I think in some cases the government subsidizes them. That's why the landlords put it up so much. And I realize they have to in some cases where it comes to renovations and expenses and stuff like that, material and stuff. But I was I don't want to take up too much time. I was in a very odd situation, Todd. I was a long-time resident in a small apartment building in North End, Halifax, just 6 units. I was there for over 30 years, and I was just owned by a private person and her son, and we got along very well, and I thought we were very good tenants, and I know they know we were very good tenants, my wife and I. And eventually, just around COVID time, my building got sold. They retired. and sold to a company. And of course, they said, well, we want to do renovations, and you're going to have to move out for such and such a time, and your rent's going to go up to this, which was, mind you, we had a sweet deal, just like no other tenant in the city has. And my rent was going to double. I couldn't really afford it. And anyway, I ended up moving out.
Mm-hmm.
I was lucky to have a place to move to, which 98% of the people don't.
Yeah.
I was very, very, very fortunate.
Mm-hmm.
And I could have stayed. But anyway, the people that moved in behind me, and not just behind me, but other tenants, and there's only 6 units, they were all pretty much new immigrants. It was obvious that they didn't have much in the way of money. Some of them were hanging their clothes out on weren't even doing laundry with the washers and dryers. They were just washing in the sink.
Okay, in the interest of time, Dave, what's your main point here? What are you driving at?
My main point is one time I heard you saying that long time tenants weren't being evicted to be replaced by new immigrants and being subsidized. I think I heard you say, well, this was like 3 years ago. I think I remember heard you say one time, well, I don't think that's happening. But it happened to me.
Yeah.
Because I had to move. And then when I moved, the people that moved in, some of the new immigrants, I gave them my bed because I didn't need it anymore. I gave them stuff. They couldn't speak English, and I just wanted to let you know that is happening. People do long time. I was there for 32 years. That was my home, my neighborhood. We loved it there.
Well, Dave, Kevin Russell is on the show tomorrow. He represents investment property owners, and I'll bring up the issue with him. He's on at 10 o'clock, and I will ask him specifically about what you're getting into. How's that sound?
But, yeah, good. But I got to just quickly, I was in a very strange situation.
Dave, I got to go. We got lots of people on hold. Thanks for the call. 902-405-6000. Vince, hello.
Hi, Todd. I'm dedicated listener and a fellow musician, and very much appreciate what you're doing. You've become the voice of integrity for me.
Thank you, sir.
Since I arrived from the West Coast. So
thank you.
My background, academic background, was in leadership, and so I've watched the interplay between Poilievre and Carney, and of course Senor Trump and the rest of the world. I know for a fact you don't get to be the governor of the Bank of Canada and to deal at the high levels in the Bank of England without dealing with huge egos. And I think that Carney has a certain quiet grace and the ability to plant seeds and doesn't necessarily have a need to actually take credit for things that might be his idea, but somebody like Trump would grab and run away with. I believe that he handled that meeting with absolute grace. And the knowledge that, it was a photo op. Essentially, all of the critical decisions happen behind closed doors, as they would in the banking world. He was not about to get all blustery and heady about Canadian issues right there in front of the cameras. And one of the reporters asked him later on, we watched your face while Trump was saying some stuff, and what were you thinking? And he said, well, I'm glad you couldn't tell what I was thinking. And so to me, it was abundantly clear that we have voted in a world-class leader. Even though his background is in banking, he has the intuitive sense to deal with big egos and to take things quietly and slowly. And I have no doubt that he is the right person for the job. I can only hazard a guess as to what Mr. Poilievre would have done in the same situation.
Well, yeah, Vince, look, I agree with what you're saying. I really do. And again, I'm not sure that's a good point. How would Poilievre have handled it? What would have been if Carney would have gone in there, or anybody would have gone in there and been at all aggressive, I mean, even borderline aggressive, it would have been I think everybody would agree it would have deteriorated rapidly and been a complete disaster.
Well, after, I don't know, I'm 61 now. I've dealt with a lot of people over the years, and Donald Trump, right from even when he had his television show, was, in my mind, what I call a light switch. And, he displays a certain amount of bipolar behavior, and the switch goes on, and he's all, happy, joy, as they used to say.
Right, that's right.
And the switch goes off, and he's got an agenda, and good luck to you if you're in the way. And so, and it's highly unpredictable. So you flatter him a little bit, you give him seeds that he can take as his own, and then he goes about his way thinking it was a great meeting and he looks fabulous. In the meantime, behind closed doors, I believe, and actually I watched him a little bit with Carney, it almost felt to me like he understood that Carney was not playable, that Carney was actually a professional at the height of his career, and it had that energy to it to me. He said a couple of stupid things, but at the end of the day, if Poilievre had been in that same seat, I don't think he would have had the respect from Trump that Carney got. I just don't see it.
Yeah, I tend to agree, and not being partisan at all, because I'm not partisan with this. I'm really not. I just want the best person for the job to be handling that situation on behalf of the country. Put partisanship aside, right? I mean, I just it kind of astounds me that so many people to the right of the spectrum, sometimes that terminology drives me nuts, but are just so ready to pounce over anything that Carney does. It doesn't matter what. Quite honestly, Vince, for people who oppose Carney and don't like Carney and are predisposed to dislike him, it doesn't matter what he did yesterday. It would have been wrong.
That's right. I just as an aside before I run away, I've kind of paid a little bit more attention politically from the time that Trump announced he was first going to run, and then of course when COVID hit. And I've been watching in my circle. I mean, I've got hundreds of people on my music Rolodex, and I watch a lot of the interactions, and there was a great increase in angst, in anger, in the need to get into the smallest fights for no reason among friends that have been sharing stages for years. And the more I look around the world, and especially in the first world and the urban world, this is becoming increasingly problematic. And then Trump gets in, it got worse. COVID hit, it got really bad. And now we are, in my mind, we're an angry, edgy society. I'm not partisan either, but once Trump got into office, I started paying attention to politics because it affects the entire world.
Yeah, well said. Thanks, Vince. Appreciate the call.
You betcha. Keep
right.
doing what you're doing.
Okay, pal. Take care. 902-405-6000. We'll continue with your calls when we come back. All right, continuing with your calls. Gina's the first-time caller. Hello, Gina.
Hi, Todd. Good afternoon. Thanks for taking my call.
Sure.
And I just wanted to chime in about Carney's visit to the White House. Let me just say that I think our Prime Minister has excellent pedigree. He's emotionally intelligent, and he exercised an amazing restraint in the face of being in the wolf's den yesterday. And I honestly agree wholeheartedly with the last caller. It takes two to tango, and Carney just wasn't having it, in spite of the fact that Trump pushed him a little. And this man knows and understands diplomacy. He was, the governor of the Central Bank of England, Canada. He knows how to play this game. He may not be an age-old politician, but I can tell you he has a mild-mannered approach to what he does and how he does it on the world stage. And I respect the fact that he did not get into a dogfight with Trump. Trump doesn't deserve that kind of attention. He doesn't deserve it. Carney did what he had to do in an effort to secure just that level of enough diplomacy on the world stage that they can begin the conversations around all the other things that are necessary or needed, particularly with U.S. and Canada relations. And that is what I wanted to say. So I hear people calling and talking about Carney should not have done this or should not have done that. The shoulda, coulda, woulda just was, it's not even a thing right now. What was important was that he did not have one of those experiences like the president of Ukraine. Like, he just wasn't having it. And I respect him for that. And I could not have, Canada is known for its people to be very calm, very mild-mannered, respectful. And for him to go on that stage, the world stage, and do otherwise would just not have been a true Canadian. And so that's what I say. For him, hats off. He did what he needed to do. And behind closed doors, all of the other conversations would be had. And if they face off in those conversations behind closed doors, that's where it's supposed to happen, but not on the world stage. And so I'm really proud of our Prime Minister. Thank you for taking my call.
Okay, thanks for the call, Gina. Appreciate it. Take care. 902-405-6000. Brian, hello.
Yeah, hey, Todd. Look, your last couple of callers, except for Sean, I totally agree. I mean, there's not a whole lot I can add to that. I appreciate your follow up on it. Having your opinion on that is just bang on. The guy was, on point 100%. The only thing I will add to it, I will, make this quick so other callers can get in. With regard to Chrystia Freeland, Trump, as we all know, can stick his foot in his mouth and shoot himself in the foot and make himself look like a fool very easily on his own. So Carney wasn't about to entertain that or stick up for her and all this kind of stuff, because this isn't new. We've all heard this before many times from him. He just, he wasn't going to poke the bear. He wasn't going to, get into any kind of confrontation or opinions or anything like that. He just calmly dealt with it, let him have his say, let him, make a fool of himself on his own, which he's very good at doing. And he did a professional job. He did as well as he could. Poilievre would have walked out of there, maybe even been guided out of there, right, in my opinion, because that's just who he is. So I think he did well. And as the lady before said, I'm proud of him. And, I think he's going to do a great job.
Okay, fair enough. Thanks for the call. Appreciate it. I'm not sure that we can predispose how Poilievre would have handled it. Perhaps Poilievre would have done a great job. I don't know. But we do know that what happened yesterday, and we do know that they could have deteriorated quickly. And it did not, because I think the way that Carney handled it. Lynette, hello.
Oh, hi. Can you hear me?
Yeah, go ahead.
Oh, great. Haven't spoken to you for a while, but I've been listening. And I'm so in agreement with Vince in every respect. I called in before he spoke. But he called you the voice of reason, and I echo that. And also, Prime Minister Carney had such a dignified presence in that office, and I can't be the only one who noticed. I mean, he was representing his Canadian, all who voted for him and those who didn't. He was representing Canada, and his demeanor was excellent. And I also, when I was watching it, I had just finished your program, and I couldn't help but laugh out loud when he looked straight into the camera. He was looking at us, and he was representing us, and he had the look in his eye that said, okay, do you see what I'm up against?
Yeah.
So I just wanted to say that's all I can add to what Vince so eloquently said.
Okay, thank you, Lynette. I appreciate it. Take care. Thanks for the calls, everybody. We didn't get to all of you for that. I apologize. Left a lot of people on hold, but a lot of people want to weigh in on this, and you can certainly do so again tomorrow. We'll open the phone lines between 11 and noon. Thanks to Vanessa Van Den Ness on the other side of the glass. The control board's doing a fine job as always. We're back tomorrow at 10 o'clock. See you then.